So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our community call on Reach Yoga TV. I'm Kathy Mines, and I'm the Director of Wellness at Reach Yoga tonight. I'm your host and call moderator. And I acknowledge that the Reach Yoga office is situated upon traditional territories of the First Nations peoples. The territories include the Huron-Wendat Confederacy, Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and today the guardians are the Mississaugas of Scugog, Hiawatha, Alderville First Nations, and the Mississaugas of the New Credit. The treaty that was signed for this particular parcel of land is collectively referred to as the Williams Treaties of 1923. Prior to contact with Europeans, the sovereign First Nations developed an agreement called the Dish with One Spoon to share the land and its resources equally, respectfully, and with the understanding of taking only what was needed to live and giving thanks for the bounty of Mother Earth. May we work together in harmony. May we respect one another, and may we honor the original peoples of this land and thank them for caretaking on behalf of future generations and all of us present today. May we learn from their relationship with the natural world, and may we join with First Nations people in the protection of the natural world. So, good evening, and I'm going to light a candle. So we're going to hold some light for ourselves tonight. We'll just go on just an opening meditation journey just to connect ourselves. So you can close your eyes, you can keep them open, anything that you like. But we'll go ahead and we'll take 3 uniting breaths together. So inhale and exhale. Start to relax your body. Inhale and exhale. Again, inhale and exhale. You can start to relax your shoulders and your jaw. And just continue to breathe, just that harmonious breathing in and out. On the inhales, we receive. On the exhales, we give. Keep relaxing and settling in. And perhaps we can use our imaginations and begin to connect our heart centers to the fire that I've lit here for us, to our candle. So all of us can send that nice tether out from our hearts to this candle and really holding light for our evening tonight. And again, as this is the topic of apology, as you continue to breathe in and out this way, feel that we have the giving and the receiving. Exhales, we're giving. Inhales, we're receiving. And let's set that template as we discuss and go into our hearts the power of an apology. And just know that you always have this connection to your breath, in and out, giving and receiving. And we can connect that to this new understanding we'll have this evening, the power of an apology. So we can walk that perfect line where we can be the giver of the apology and the receiver of the apology. Good. Just a couple more breaths. Just having so much gratitude for our time together. Gratitude for this technology that allows us to come together this way. And gratitude for each other for making this all possible, for showing up. Just hold that in your hearts. Let's go ahead, one more nice deep breath together. Inhale. And you can exhale and open your eyes. So Juan Carlos, he's been an activist for gender and racial equity and justice for almost 30 years. And it's my joy to introduce you to this peaceful warrior, Juan Carlos Arean. I was very lucky to be part of the group where we were studying in Mexico together, and a couple of other people are on this call that had this experience too. And Juan Carlos didn't want much of an introduction. But I do want to say, if you know somebody and you've had this in your life where from a distance you've admired the way somebody is moving in their life, Juan Carlos is this person. You know, I've met many people through Ubiquity University and the Wisdom School of Graduate Studies where we were with. And many of these people, I didn't get to know them very well, but observed how they moved through this life and held them in my heart because of this. Juan Carlos is one of these people that happened to me with. And I welcome you tonight. And I thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Mm-hmm. I'm blessed to be here with all of you. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, Kathy. And I think when people share very deep experiences, right, experiences outside of the ordinary in some way, I think we create this very deep connection. We were talking the other day, Kathy and I, preparing for this. And I said something about like, well, you know, even we don't know each other very well. And Kathy was saying, oh my God, I feel like we know each other very well. So yes, thank you for that. So all I want to say is thank you for welcoming me. I come with great humility and love to share this story with all of you, which is this short documentary that actually my son and his girlfriend put together. Only 3 months ago, I look different because I grew a quarantine beard since. So you might not recognize me, but it's me. So what I would like to do is just show this. This is about 20 minutes, so maybe 21 minutes. And then right after that, we'll hold the space because I find that the energy of the apology is very powerful. And then I will lead us into a short guided meditation so that we can all place ourselves in the circle. And then after that, we will open it to comments or questions or whatever is in your heart to share. And then we will close after that. So Kathy, let's go ahead and show the piece.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and mute you, Juan Carlos.
My name is Juan Carlos Arean. I am husband, father, most of my adult life to pursue healing, love, racial and gender justice. So I consider myself an activist. So in November of 2016, I went down to Teotihuacan, Mexico, to do a week-long workshop based on the Toltec way of transformation. And the Toltecs were kind of like the mystical arm of all the indigenous people of Mesoamerica, of Mexico and Central America. They carried that tradition with different names, thousands of years to the present. They are very focused on personal growth and devotion to spirituality. And Teotihuacan was a place that is thought to have been like an initiation place for priests and maybe priestesses to carry that tradition in particular. So it's an amazing complex of enormous pyramids near Mexico City, and it's really designed for that kind of training. And that week that I spent there was also designed to be that kind of training. A little bit of a hero's journey, going down into the dark and emerging again, and in that way cultivating our own transformation. One interesting thing about that week is that it also coincided with the Dia de los Muertos, which, the Day of the Dead, in which traditionally people go to cemeteries or in their homes create altars to honor their past ancestors. So one of the big elements of that is creating these beautiful altars with flowers and with other elements. So we were told in advance when we went down to this workshop that we would be making an altar. So to please bring photographs of ancestors that we felt close to. And immediately for me, the the face of my maternal grandfather, whose name was Luis Alvarez Pastor, came to my mind. He was very, very influential in my life. And I spent a lot of time with my grandfather. I really believe that he's the person that taught me that I was unconditionally loved. He also taught me significantly that men could have a range of emotions. So I saw him cry, for instance, several times, and he laughed. He was larger than life. He was really quite a personality. Now, as is often the case with people that have great light, he also had a great shadow. He believed that European people were superior to other people, especially indigenous people in Mexico. All my family comes from Spain. Most of them, all of them recent immigrants, only 2 or 3 generations back. My father was born in Spain. My grandfather that I mentioned was also born in Spain. So it was a very Spanish family, which would be kind of the equivalent of being a white family, right? We don't call it that. We're being a white family here in the US. Just to give you an example, for instance, we had servants that had some indigenous blood for sure, and they were not allowed to use the bathrooms that we used. They had their own bathroom, and there was this very strict separation. So that's just one small way of many subtle and not subtle ways in which I received the message that we were in fact superior than other people, the original people from Mexico. And it's an internalized belief that I have had to work my whole life, really, and continue working. So I started to struggle with these feelings early on in the workshop. When I created the altar, I was going to include my grandfather, which gave me both incredible gifts, but this very difficult legacy too, right? But also I wanted to honor the victims of basically the genocide that happened in that land. So I felt, okay, I need to do something. I need to include something in the altar to honor those people. And that will be a gesture for me, an important gesture. The next day that I thought this, we went to the market to buy supplies for our altar. So we bought, flowers and incense and this, sugar skulls that you eat in Mexico. And I was looking and I couldn't find anything in the market that could symbolize the victimization that had happened there. So I did my shopping. I had some extra time. I crossed the street and there was a little museum there. I just thought, it's like the town museum. This was a little town near Teotihuacan called Otumba. And I just went into the museum and lo and behold, right in front of me was this amazing mural that was depicting exactly what I was looking for. It was a mural showing the Spanish, and in particular Hernan Cortés, which was the leader of the Spanish, massacring the Aztecs right there. And this was interesting, of course, a great synchronicity, but also when I read the little plaque about the mural, something that probably I learned in school, but I had forgotten. That town where we were, Otumba, was the very town where the decisive battle between the Spanish and the Aztecs happened, where the Spanish finally won a long war, right? So literally, I was standing in ground that had been soaked with blood because there was a big, big massacre there of the Aztecs and of the people that I had to honor. So I was flabbergasted by the synchronicity. So I took a picture of the mural and had it printed and then integrated it into my altar. So I had the photograph of my grandfather on one hand and this mural on the other. And it felt as an important step to recognize that as part of my own journey. However, I just still felt incomplete. I felt there's more to do now during this week here. So I just started thinking, and it just came to me that I should offer a ritual or ceremonial apology to the people of that land. I didn't have any idea how this could happen. There was just an idea. And I was sitting down during one of the meals right in front of one of the leaders of the workshop. His name is Will Tagle. And I just mentioned it to him. I told him a little bit about the story, what I had been feeling, what I've been telling you here. And I said, I'm just feeling this need, this urge to offer an apology, but I don't know how. Maybe you might have some ideas. And he immediately said, wow, this would be so amazing and powerful. Let's do something. Which was kind of interesting because up to that moment, I just, had been taking one step at a time. But the moment he took the idea, I have to recognize I felt a lot of fear about it. Like all of a sudden, oh my God, what am I doing here, right? I don't remember if later that day or the next day he came to me and said, well, I've been thinking about what you told me and I have a proposition for you. And he said, so when we do this week-long retreats here, the last night we have a group of Mexica dancers and really shamans, like carriers of the Toltec tradition. In Mexico, we call them concheros. And they come and demonstrate to the group of folks that are here in retreat, which was mainly North American, US and Canadian folks. So these Mexican folks come and create a ceremony and show us how they are practicing this Toltec tradition that we have been studying right now. So he said, I know very well the leader. His name is Don Pedro Diaz. I have talked to him and I mentioned that your story and your desire to offer an apology, and he is interested in hearing it and basically creating the space during that ceremony for that to happen. So at which point I really start feeling scared. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing here? But as it has been all this journey, right, it's just one step at a time. And at this point, I wasn't going to say, no, let's do it. Let's not do it, right? So I said, okay, sure, let's do it. That evening and from the morning, all my practice was dedicated to praying, in particular to the Divine Mother, who has been a leading force for me, and just asking her to guide me and to bless me and to give me the courage to go ahead with this. And I think that's how I work through the fear, through prayer. So that evening came, and after dinner we were gathering, and then Will came to me and said, well, I'd like to introduce you to Don Pedro right now so that you can tell him what your intentions are. I will never forget this. The man was dressed in this ceremonial dress with, I think he had some kind of animal skin that he was wearing. And then he had this enormous hair dress that was almost almost as big as he was. So it was like an incredible presence. I go in front of him and he's kind of like checking me out and like, well, what does this gringo want? So, basically, because we were all Americans there. So I started speaking Spanish to him, and he immediately, I could tell that he kind of relaxed a little bit and smiled a little bit. And I just put out my intention briefly, and he said, okay, I'll make it happen. I'll call you when we are ready. Right? And then I went back, continued to pray, to work through my fear. Finally, the group that were there on retreat, were called to come outside. And they had prepared this amazing, incredible altar made of flowers at this huge container with a big fire in the center. There were about, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 of them, all dressed like I had seen Don Pedro with ceremonial clothes and so on. And two of them were playing these enormous drums. They called the directions first, and they smudged everyone, and then they started dancing, kind of ecstatic dancing. So the dance went on for, I would say, about an hour or so. So definitely I think all were feeling in an altered state after that happened. And then at some point they stopped. They actually released the directions, which in a ceremony that usually means it's the end of the ceremony. At which point I felt, maybe Don Pedro forgot about the apology, and to be totally frank, I was relieved at that point. But of course no. The Mexica people gathered in a small circle, and they asked us to come closer, so all the North Americans were around it. And then Don Pedro told me, okay, come over to the center. And then Will, the person who had really facilitated all of this, also, he kind of stood on the side, and I just felt him like such a grounding force there next to me. I was facing this man, Will was on my side. We were just looking at each other's eyes. And again, I had been praying all this time, so he just said, okay, go ahead. So at that point, I just, I had been thinking a little bit about what I would say, but I have not really scripted. So I let really Spirit guide me in that way. And I did, after the ceremony that evening, I did write what I remember saying. And right now I would like to share it, what I wrote, because I think it really captures the spirit. Maybe it wasn't exactly word by word, but it's really the spirit of what I said. So I'm standing there facing him, and I said to him in Spanish, "My people, the Spanish, arrived in this land almost 500 years ago. We did not come in the spirit of peace. We did not come with our hearts open. We did not come to learn from this great culture. We came to conquest. We came to dominate. We came to subjugate, guided by greed, arrogance, hate, and a false sense of superiority. My ancestors were welcome on this land, and we paid you back for your generosity by killing your men, raping your women, and enslaving your children. We tortured, we mutilated, we tried to destroy your culture, and obviously failed. Today, I come with great humility, representing myself, my family, my ancestors, and my people, to offer an apology to you, your families, your ancestors, and all the people who have walked this sacred land from the beginning of time, for all the atrocities committed by the Spanish. I come with an open heart. I come in the spirit of peace. I come with great humility to tell you how sorry I am for what happened. It deeply pains me to see the hurt and suffering caused by my people. At that point, I felt very strongly that I had to kneel in one knee. And it's interesting because Don Pedro didn't want it. He said, no. I said, yes, I need to do this. And I just ended by saying, humbly, I ask for your forgiveness, even if it's a small gesture compared with the enormity of the mayhem that took place here. Thank you for listening. And at this point, Don Pedro pulled me off, I can stand. And this is a moment that I will never, ever forget in my life. Like, looking right at his eyes. He was crying, I was crying, everybody was crying. And he basically said, never in my life would I have ever imagined that someone of Spanish descent would never mind apologize, but even acknowledge the damage that had happened here. And then he just hugged me, and I just felt so much love. I mean, he didn't say, I forgive you. He didn't say anything like that, but that energy of union was right there. I don't think I have ever felt so connected to like another human being in terms of, okay, we were one at that told him one. And that has stayed with me. That really has stayed with me and has opened my heart in such incredible ways. And then Don Pedro asked every one of the other dancers to hug me. So one by one, they came to me and gave me this beautiful heart-to-heart hugs. And then the elder came forward and offered a poem in Nahuatl, which is the language of the Mexica. And it was a beautiful poem about how the roots, even if you hurt the tree, the roots are still there, and how the trees revitalize themselves, come to life again. It was, I'm not doing it justice, but it was very beautiful. And then Will played a conch. That was the end of the ceremony. And of course, I was incredibly moved and very raw, and just thinking about it, such an emotional moment for me. And you know, various people that had been in the retreat came and hugged me, and I think it really was a collective experience. This couldn't have happened without that circle. I feel everybody had a role there. But the last thing that I want to share is that this woman, who was Native Canadian woman, with whom I had not had a lot of interaction during the retreat, and she certainly didn't know anything about my story that I have been telling you till this moment when she heard the apology. So she came to me and she said, "This might seem weird because we don't know each other, but I just got a message for you, and I literally am feeling like someone is pushing me and asking me, please tell him that. I don't know what the message means, but it's this: you are a wonderful grandson." At which point, that's when I lost it. I just started crying, wailing, basically. And it was beautiful because the community came around me and hugged me. And I felt so much love and so much sense of healing happening, not only with the people that were there physically, but also that people were not there. For me, it was very clear at that point that this healing was beyond myself and Don Pedro and the people that were around, but it also went to other dimensions, and in particular to my grandfather. So in some way I felt that was his way of thanking me.
So now I would invite us all to take a breath together, to absorb that energy of apology, love. And just find a comfortable seat. If you're able, put both of your feet on the ground. And you can keep your eyes closed or keep a soft gaze. And I just want you to go into your mind's eye now. And I want you to imagine in your mind's eye that you are outside at a ceremony similar to the one that you just witnessed, you just heard about. You are barefoot and you can feel the grass under your feet and all the living organisms and the earth. You can feel the breeze of the evening time, beautiful, balmy evening. We're all standing in a circle, and there's a beautiful fire in the center of the circle. And then there's the invitation. And this is just an invitation. If you, in your mind's eye, in your imagination, you feel called to come to the center of the circle, to offer an apology, or perhaps to offer forgiveness to someone. If you feel called, go ahead and step into the circle, into the center. And if you don't feel called, then your job is just to hold the space, which is a very important job. If you choose to step to the center, you can look around all the faces in the circle, illumined by the fire. Then you can invite another person to stand for that person that you want to offer an apology or forgive, or both. You choose one person to stand for that relative, that friend, and invite them to the center of the circle. They accept the invitation and they come forward. And now you're standing in front of them, looking right into their eyes, ready to offer what is in your heart. Now we will go into silence so that you can call upon the words that are needed to be said to this person. You start wrapping up. And then thank your friend. And slowly both of you walk back to your place in the circle. We all thank the Creator for this moment of healing. And slowly start coming back to this circle. And we'll take a deep breath together. And when you are ready, you can open your eyes. And now I will pass it back to you, Kathy, to facilitate any kind of comments, questions, whatever you want to share, whatever is in your heart is welcome here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story and the experience and that meditation. Yes, you are a human I admire, and I thank you for all of that vulnerability and openness that you're sharing with us tonight. So if there's anybody that has any questions, comments, sharings, so please type in into the box, and I will unmute you and bring you on, or you can click the raise your hand. If you need to do some waving so I can see you, I can see some of you. But is there anybody that, take a deep breath, you can do it. Is there anybody that would like to say anything, share anything, have a question?
There's Franco.
Frank.
Kathy, you say him?
Okay. You're unmuted, Grandfather Frank.
Carlos, thank you so much for having the courage to do what you did. It is very difficult for us to understand what it means to forgive. Ask forgiveness of those that we have trampled. I am from Europe. I believe that you, as I, we're not alone on this journey. I believe that your grandfather, your ancestors, had something to say in that journey that you took to finally do what they wanted to do from where they are sitting. This is a powerful moment to recognize that we're not alone. But as I've been told many times for all the years that I've been working with Indigenous community, the ancestors are working with us on this journey.
Yeah.
And as we are sitting here in this center, it's just the beginning of what we can do from here on to continue the journey, to build a platform for the people that have given so much. But most of all, I'll just be short about it, is I have never met a culture that knows how to forgive as the original people of Turtle Island. This, as I can say with all my heart, from all the experience that I have had, these people know how to forgive. And us stepping forward and asking for that forgiveness, we know that it goes in the right place, in the right heart. Thank you so much for what you did.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Rosemary, please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Well, Carlos, I just wanted to say, wow, this was so touching, and thank you for this great example of courage, and you just demonstrated something that I know I've been working on, is connecting with the ancestors myself. But something that I just saw here tonight has touched me very deeply about the connection and why that is so relevant and important for us today and how we go forward. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. And Sheila is typing something in that I'm going to read. Thank you, Juan Carlos. So Sheila was also there. This was so very powerful and heartening. For the first time, I experienced this apology at the time. And now, with tears in my eyes, I'm touched deeply again. I'm inspired and grateful for you showing the way. This is the work we all need to do in our own way now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you.
Oh, anybody else? Any questions? I did have a question that maybe I can figure out how to say it, but with this such deep experience of this apology, have you found that it has brought, apology medicine into your life more with other people?
Absolutely. And I've been living with this, and in fact, as this was part of a doctoral program at Wisdom University. So I'm writing my dissertation about this. So I think about it a lot. One thing that that has been beautiful to see is that this is not an isolated event. And I don't know if you folks have seen that these kinds of events are happening. In fact, there was an apology that happened in the very place where George Floyd grew up in Houston, where a group of white folks from a church apologized to a group of Black folks from a church. I think, Kathy, you saw it, and we can send it around, but it's incredibly moving. A couple of months after this happened in Teotihuacan, the story that I told, Standing Rock, there was a very similar apology there happening. I remember some people that had been down in Mexico just texted me and said, "Did you see this? This was so similar." And it has happened in different places. It happened at Wounded Knee also within the last year. So I think this is, as Rosemary said, this is a time where this particular energy is needed, and I think different people are channeling it in different ways. And it's obviously not only about ancestral apology. It's not only about this kind of enormous thing, but it's apology at every level, right? From men to women for all the atrocities that we men have done. From straight people to people that, from other identifications and genders, and the list goes on and on, because there's so much pain and suffering. Personally, I think as Kathy said, I've been an activist for almost 30 years, but this has changed the way that I do the work. It just opened my heart in such a different way. I was listening to the last call that you had in your series, and was said that what is needed to fight racism right now is compassion and love and forgiveness, and that's what this has given me, right? To the point that I have been in professional meetings. I work professionally in an organization here in the U.S. that does prevention of violence against women and gender-based violence. And just to give you an example, we were all watching when Christine Ford went in front of Congress here during one of the confirmations, right, of a Supreme Court judge, and just in the middle of it, I just started sobbing. I just couldn't, I think my heart is so broken, of course, with George Floyd, all of that, and I think that's what's required. At least I'll speak for myself. I have had to continue to have my heart broken and continue to heal it, and I think that's what will do it, at least for me. So I am very grateful, and I continue. I mean, every time I tell the story, I feel so emotional. It's been a very powerful experience for me, Kathy. Now, you were there, Kathy. So can you say something about what the experience was like for you?
Sure. Well, one thing I knew at the end, I needed to go to my room so I could really cry it out. Like I actually needed to go and be alone and just, yeah, really not chat too much. I didn't want to, I wasn't ready for it to, I was still absorbing. And I was there, I had traveled by myself there. So I, you know, it's not like me and my bestie ran off to our rooms or anything. I got to be very alone and be with that. But as I think back and, you know, seeing the photos of all of us there, it really did stand out that we were in an ecstatic state from that beautiful dancing and so open. And it was like we were one big person. You know, the people that were there were, I don't know, so like mature in their hearts and held such strong roots. And that was obvious too. So we could all experience the emotion, you know, of the apology happening. It was like everybody else made each other strong or something. Yeah. And I have never forgotten that trip, that experience. I have never forgotten you. And when I saw that the documentary was made and reached out to you, I know it's however many people have watched it. I've probably watched it 10 times.
Wow.
And I could continue to watch it, and I just learn. It's like I'm not learning in my mind. I'm learning in my body, my heart, and my spirit from that. Yeah, that's what I have to say about that. Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy. I do think that a very important element of it is that it happened in a sacred ceremony, and that container was created. I think it would have been very different otherwise. And it's interesting because I've been doing these apology circles, mainly in person, but now a couple on Zoom. And sometimes I've done it in different settings, and in some settings, just because of who the audience was, I still, you know, try to do a little bit of an invocation. I certainly do a lot of prayer beforehand myself, but, you know, do some kind of invocation of something. And they tend not to be as powerful as when some kind of ceremony is happening, including, for instance, I gave a sermon at a church during a service, and that was a very, very powerful circle, actually. So the work I'm doing on my dissertation is particularly about ceremonial apologies in the context of ceremony.
Yeah.
Looks like Natalie wants to speak.
Yeah, go for it. Natalie, unmute yourself.
Thank you. And thank you, Juan Carlos, for sharing that. It was really powerful. I'm obviously still processing it. You know, in light of the recent events that have happened, which you mentioned with George Floyd and racism going on, and it seems like it's a tipping point. Although I've had some honest, vulnerable conversations with my principal. I'm a teacher, and she is a Black woman, and she expressed that, you know, this has been going on since, you know, for a long time, and she's tired of it. So we had this conversation today, and I brought it up. I thought, you know, why we need to talk about these things. We need to talk about things that are uncomfortable, you know, and it's tricky from a white person to bring it up. But we've been texting and connecting, and I hadn't seen her face to face. And I really wanted to connect heart to heart. And so what you said about apology, the ceremony, that formal ceremony, we might not be able to have a ceremony, but I was thinking, what if in conversation with people that I have that in mind, that, okay, maybe I didn't commit atrocities, but my people did. You know, there's a history, right?
Right.
And that is what I was feeling actually today when I was talking with her. Was I was feeling like, what can I do? And I can't begin to understand. I said that. I am not going to begin to understand. I'm just here. I'm here.
Sure.
I want to be here, you know, with you,
Yeah.
right? But to have the I'm sorry in my heart, that really feels good. And maybe,
Right.
you know, when you're closer to people, you could actually say that, you know, I am so
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and it brings such a humility and feeling and like you said, an open heart, not to say,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not racist, or I'm, you know, you get all stuck in this mumbo jumbo that's really up here. It's not in the heart.
Right.
You just take
Right.
yourself completely out of that. Just stop labeling. Just be there, open-hearted, humble, and yeah, I am sorry for what white people have done, what they are doing, what they continue to do. You don't have
Right.
to have the answer, the solution. Like you've always
Right.
feel like, I do anyway. I want to have a solution, but
Right.
that's not it. That is not it. It's just
Right.
to connect human to human, just from here, right?
Right.
And that is what happened today when I was talking with my principal, and it felt good. But I really appreciate what you shared tonight. That's an extra level of deepness and connectedness to the heart. So thank you so much, Juan Carlos.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you. And a couple of things that you said, like what comes to mind, one of the most powerful things about that ceremony for me was to take full responsibility for what happened there, even though, you know, how many times we hear white people, well, but, you know, that was 500 years ago. It wasn't. But to take full responsibility without any buts, without anything, like it's just fully my responsibility of what happened there. That was extraordinarily powerful. And the other thing is the I'm sorry, and this is a process that I have come to understand, that I'm sorry. Sorry has the same root as sorrow, right? So I'm sorry means I'm in sorrow. So for me, an authentic apology is an apology of grief, right? Je suis désolé, right, in French. Lo siento in Spanish, I feel it. I'm brokenhearted. For me, that has become kind of the center of what an authentic apology is. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's a few comments that I'd like to read, but first, Jenny, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Juan Carlos. Thank you so much for sharing all of that tonight. That was very powerful and beautiful. And I wanted just to acknowledge the incredible openness and generosity that the people who you apologized to had to have. And I just wanted to, because I'm seeing a lot of, I'm a white woman, and I'm seeing a lot of white folks carrying apology energy in the world right now, which I think is good and good intention, but I think it's really important for us to kind of emphasize the context, and that you went and got consent from these people first, and that right? And you weren't putting undue emotional labor onto them, or like centering yourself, or making them hold space for you to have emotions about this. So I wondered if you could give advice maybe about how to navigate our current situation without centering ourselves, and instead making space for the people that are suffering.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Jenny. You know, sometimes I have my own doubts just in my head about, like, well, so what's the big deal? I mean, what was that? You know, what did that do in the world? And then I talk to people and I tell the story, and I realize that there's very profound healing happening. It's not the only thing that is called for. That's something that I think is very important, right? This is not like, oh, well, I did this and now I can, whatever, forget about this issue. In some way, for me, even though it's part of a long history of my work, it's a beginning of something. So I don't know if I can give you direction on that, because this just happened to me. This is not something I planned, obviously. This is something that I opened myself, and it's part of a longer journey that, you know, if we had more time, I would share, in which, you know, I have shared this with Kathy, but a few years ago, I had a very profound mystical experience in Chartres in France, where the Divine Mother asked me to follow her or die, basically. So for me, it's been just taking one step at a time and asking the Mother to just guide me and to, like, what's the next thing, and what's the next thing, and what's the next thing. And for instance, for me to come to the circles, when I'm invited, it's always a yes, right? With great humility. Because that's the next step forward, right? So all I can tell you is, from my perspective, and I don't know if you will resonate with this, is all we can do is take the next step. And of course, an apology does require the consent of the other person, right? But you can apologize without the other person. You can apologize in your heart, right? And you don't need their forgiveness either, right? Apology and forgiveness are connected, but they are not inseparable. I think they're both healing events. So all I can say is follow your heart. And, you know, obviously today it told you to come here, so I'm grateful for that.
Thank you. Thank you for everything this evening. It's been beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to read a couple of the comments here. Mark, he wrote, it's an unstoppable groundswell. Yes. Lisa says, welcome, Juan Carlos. Thank you so much for sharing your words and story. I had no idea what I would be experiencing tonight. My own journey began with many visits and love for Mexico, especially the people that I have met and the experiences that I have had. I feel I've come full circle again. It's lovely. Thank you. Laura Simpian, Kathy, thank you for this. Such a unique experience. I'm speechless. And please, please, please never stop your great work to help people like me. You empowered me. This is exactly how I feel right now. Okay. Thank you, Laura. That's very nice.
Thank you.
Okay, Hazel, thank you. Do you think and this might have been answered by what you said about the apology with a ceremony setting. Do you think that by doing it in a place where the blood spilled, that you helped to heal the land?
Absolutely. I mean, the synchronicity was extraordinary, right? I mean, you know, to have read, like, yeah, this is where it happened. So, you know, it wasn't a coincidence that it happened there. Yes. And as you know, there's people you may or might know that have been, that on purpose go around places where there have been particularly violent massacres and so on, like Wounded Knee, of course, another example, right, to us, to create that energy of apology and forgiveness, because yeah, the land carries that trauma, of course, we all do.
Thank you. So I'm going to read a couple more comments and then we'll unmute Vicky, but let me read these comments first. So from Andre, blessings, Juan Carlos, what a beautiful and moving apology. It brought something deeply painful up in me. Thank you for the meditation. I was able to speak to a Native girl I heard as a child and reminded to continue to make amends and forgive myself.
Thank you. That's very moving. Thank you.
From Anne, Juan Carlos, I love what you said, that we must break our hearts before we can heal. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead, Vicky, unmute yourself.
Can I see it? Hi. Hi, Juan Carlos. Hi, Kathy. It's taken me all this time to process the story and the experience of the description of the experience. And the one word that keeps resounding with me now is grandeur.
Mm-hmm.
When I go through the experience and the way you described it and what was said and how it was received and the research, just a grandeur that you illustrated that can come with authenticity, with compassion, with heartfelt openness, with accountability, with speaking the truth, with saying it like it is. And the whole thing just, that's the word that just is vibrating with me right now with your story. So, so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vicky.
It had never occurred to me before, because an apology sounds, well, like what it sounds like. And it's lovely to see the true nature of a true apology. The blessing and the grandeur of it. Sorry, I'm repeating that word because that's what keeps repeating. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Vicky. I just want to let everybody know that I put the link to the documentary in the chat box. Don't worry if you're not figuring out how to access the chat box yet. You can always message me or somehow get to me, and I'll make sure that you have that if you want to share it with others or watch it again and again. So Juan Carlos, do you have any closing thoughts or words before I take us into a little meditation?
I just want to recognize that that image of the broken heart comes from one of my very influential teachers at Wisdom, which is Andrew Harvey. And his thing is sacred activism, right? And maybe you know him. He's an amazing person, and he says you have to follow where your heart is broken. That's where the activism is, where the most grief you carry. That's where it goes. So I just want to say that over and over when I'm invited to share the story. Either this is the first time I've done it like by watching me doing it. I usually tell the story live. So that was an interesting experience, Kathy. But every time, people express their gratitude, and I take it in and I welcome it. But I have to say that I'm always so much blessed by telling the story and by being in circle with kindred spirits. I think just by telling the story and by absorbing it, I think some deep healing continues to happen, certainly in me, but I think in many of us. So I just want to thank you, Kathy, for inviting me, and thank you all for such a beautiful circle. I just can feel just a love from all of you. So I'm very, very grateful.
Thank you. And of course, when we start to wind it up, all kinds of things come up. One of the elders, Vivi, did you want to unmute yourself? I see you've raised your hand. Vivi?
Oh, I was just writing it because I didn't want to take much time. Pero buenas noches, Juan Carlos. Thank you so much for myself watching video twice, watch it with Kathy the first time, and I was so excited that you were coming. I couldn't wait to see you again and to listen to the video. And what comes to me about that beautiful apology, because we are in Turtle Island as immigrants, really, we all come from Europe. I'm wishing in my heart that there'll be a day that we can walk out in a peaceful way, and that the indigenous people from Turtle Island know that we truly apologize for the atrocities that we did, and that we are grateful that they opened their arms and that we are here. And as our teacher would always say to us, our ancestors came so that we also came into Turtle Island, which is South America, North America, and Central America, to learn about truth, to learn about love, about the connection to spirit, which is missing in our. So I don't know, I've got this thing that as everybody's marching everywhere, even almost all over the world, for George Floyd, that there'll be something similar for the indigenous people that can be done for them. An apology from all of us. So that would be something, don't know how that could get coordinated, but I truly believe that they deserve that for opening the arms for us to be here on this land. So I wanted to say that.
Thank you, Vivi. Thank you. De nada, gracias.
Thank you. So I'll read the last couple of comments, and if you, after I read these comments, anything else you type in, just know that I'll send it to Juan Carlos, so you can, when we finish just this closing meditation, just a few breaths together, I'll unmute everybody, we can all say goodbye and thank yous, but you can continue to type. But I'll just read from Marianne. I thought about the phrase, when you block the pain, you block the love. When you experienced and shared the pain, you also released the love that was there. Receive both for the indigenous peoples as well as for yourself and your family. Yeah, the beautiful Marianne. And beautiful. Then from Joanne, I think such a heartfelt apology has a real universal impact, and that it's not surprising that right afterwards, other apologies were happening in other parts of the world. So powerful. Thank you so much. I was deeply moved by your apologies. So beautiful.
Thank you.
Mark says, T.S. Eliot, what we call the beginning is often the end. And to make an end is to make the beginning. The end is where we start from. So thank you, everybody. I would just like to take a couple of collective breaths together, and I will blow out our candle and close our circle. So just close your eyes. And again, let's take those 3 deep connected breaths. Inhale. And exhale. Again, inhale. And exhale. One more time together. Inhale. And as you exhale, exhale gratitude into the space where you are right now. Fill up your own space, your own homes with gratitude, forgiveness, the spirit of apology, love. And just every inhale, every exhale, just exhaling more and more of those attributes of your heart into your own space. And allow yourselves to steep in that. I'm going to blow out our candle. Juan Carlos, thank you so much. Come back anytime. Come back anytime. I'm going to unmute everybody. So everybody is unmuted. If you want to say good night. Good night.
So much. Good night. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy, for making this possible.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
Awesome that we can do this.
Gracias, Juan Carlos. Miigwech, Kathy.
Thank you.
Mama pibigwam minuo.
Thank you.
Buenas noches, Juan Carlos.
Buenas noches.
Kathy.
Love you, Vivi. All right. Well, thank you. I will close off the call and wish you all sweet dreams. If there's any other things you want to share, I'll see you in the dream time, friends. Juan Carlos, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.